Okay, good afternoon. My name is Jorge Newbery, and I'm the founder and CEO of American Homeowner Preservation. What we do is we purchase pools of defaulted mortgages from banks, usually at big discounts, and then we offer sustainable solutions to keep families at risk of foreclosure in their homes. Now, Dara shared some sobering statistics about the rising income and wealth gaps in this country. I'm going to add a couple of more. Actually, it's a few more. But 43% of Americans spend more than they make. That's unsustainable. 76% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 400 American billionaires have as much wealth as the entire African American population of our country, which is 41 million people. Those 400 American billionaires in 2013 saw their net worth rise by $800 million each. In that same year, the average net worth of an African American family in our country dropped to $4,995. And the final one, the average net worth of a single African American female in this country is $5. Uprising. Dara also mentioned uprising. Whoops. Am I okay? Can you hear me okay? Or did I pop a mic? One. I think I dropped one. The mic didn't like my statistics, apparently. Okay, let's see. Here we go. Okay, this is going to be better. Okay, I got it. Okay, we're back. Or I'm back. Okay, now recent events. I mean, this summer is almost a repeat of last summer. There's been recent events in Milwaukee just a couple of nights ago. An African American man was shot and killed by the police, and it resulted in disturbance. Some call it a riot. The press calls it a riot. In Minneapolis, Baton Rouge, Chicago. I live in Chicago currently. Protests continually. So this is a big problem, and although it manifests itself in police shootings and crime and whatnot, much of it is rooted in economics. And so what we do is we buy the mortgages in many of these low to moderate income communities. Oftentimes these homes have values of less than $100,000, less than $75,000, less than $50,000. And for Wall Street, they see little or no value in spending any effort in recovering these mortgages once the families stop paying. So we can often buy these for 15, 20, 25 cents on the dollar. So to give you an example, someone took out a loan at the height of the last market bubble, and they took a loan of $100,000. Now that property may be worth $50,000. We can buy that loan for $15,000. Now that gives us a lot of flexibility. We can go to that family and say, if you want to stay in, and this is exactly what we do. As soon as we buy a loan, we send a letter to the family and say, if you want to stay in your home, using those numbers in that example, their payment was probably $800, so we'll drop your payment to $500. And in many cases, many of these families haven't paid their mortgages in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. In fact, how many people in this room have a friend or family member, someone you know, who has faced foreclosure in the last 10 years? I know it's got to be more than that. And let me ask you too, of the families that faced foreclosure, how many had trouble trying to get a solution with their banks or servicer? Well, that was just about everybody who raised their hand the first time. And it's amazing that many of there's been government programs, bank programs that said, hey, we're going to help hardest hit fund. There's these different types of programs, and they've all been generally just a giveaway of government money to the banks. And so what we do, and what happens is the families say, hey, I'll apply for HAMP, these different programs, and they'll have to send in tax returns, paycheck stubs. a hardship letter saying why they got behind. And most families lost their job, had a medical emergency. There's all kinds of reasons they fell behind. So here it is, almost a decade after the crisis. And many of these families are still not in their homes, but they haven't been paying and haven't paid 3, 4, 5 years. So now to bring the loans current is sometimes more than the house is worth. So it could be $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. So we go to those families. Again, we send a letter. We'll drop your payment from $800 to $500. You owe $30,000 in delinquent payments. We'll take $2,000 and we'll forgive the difference. You're up to date. And your principal balance, which is $100, we'll drop it to $50. So now it makes sense, things are aligned, and in many cases, they start paying and it works. And again, we paid $15,000 for the loan, so oftentimes within a year, we've recouped most of our investment, and many of these families will continue to pay for 20, 25 years. In some cases, the families have already left. They've given up and just left the home. So then we track them down, and we'll say, hey, you walked away from your home, you owed more than the home was worth, we'll forgive the loan if you sign over the deed, and they do a deed in lieu in foreclosure, and oftentimes we'll give them $1,000 or $2,000, and then we own the home, which again is worth maybe $50. We only paid $15 for the loan. We gave the family $1,000. We can sell it. Maybe we net $40 from the sale. We're probably going to make $20,000 in that situation. Now, the worst situation is what typically happens to the banks and servicers, less so with us, but it still happens, is the family does nothing. No one responds. And we have to go through a foreclosure process, which in many states can take years and thousands of dollars. Georgia, in fact, is a fairly fast state, maybe 6 months or even sometimes less to complete a foreclosure. But in states like New York, it can take 2.5, even 3 years. And that's a lot of time. The taxes are very high. They'll accrue, and you'll pay a lot of legal fees. And by the time you get that home back, and maybe it's vandalized, you're often, we may be breaking even on our investment. So every time that we can achieve a consensual solution is where we make money, and that's the returns that we generate. People sometimes ask, our returns, we pay 12%, which is what we have to do to compete with people like Ground Floor. And but 12%, and people say that's too high, you're taking it, it's off the backs of the families, but if you see, it's not. It's all made when we buy these loans. If we can buy these loans at the discounts that we can get, because truly, the banks, hedge funds, they don't want these loans. We can buy these at these discounts, that's where we make the money, and we can provide a transformative solution to many of these families and do two things. We can generate a 12% return to investors, and at the same time, keep these families in their homes if they want them. If they don't want them or the home's already vacant, we can put that home back into service and take a vacant home and get it occupied. And the sad reality is 10 years later, Chicago, Buffalo, Rochester, St. Louis, you'll go through some of those neighborhoods and it's still 50% of the homes are vacant, boarded up, magnets for crime, and these neighborhoods are years away from recovering. And I'll give you another sad statistic. 5% of the homes in this country worth over $1 million are more than 25% underwater. For the homes with values of $50,000 or less, 53%. So more than half the homes in the poorest neighborhoods of our country are underwater, and not just underwater by a little, underwater by more than 25%. And even worse is we see all the HGTV homes, and people are making money fixing and flipping. But again, the lowest income neighborhoods are left behind. Appreciation has happened in every price level from $50,000 on up, but under $50,000 home values are dropping. And it's this continued increase in the wealth and income gaps. And so we do our part, and we encourage you to invest. If you're interested, you can invest and both generate a good return and have an impact in these communities. Final thing. People ask, why are we good at this? It's not a business. Most people don't go into business to be debt buyers. And here's what happened. In 2002, I owned over 4,000 apartments across the country, had a net worth of tens of millions of dollars, and an ice storm hit my biggest holding, which was 1,100 units. And over the next 18 months, I lost everything, and I ended up $26 million in debt. So not only did I lose 4,000 apartments. I also had personally guaranteed a number of these loans, so I ended up with this pile of debt. Now, to get out of that debt, I never filed bankruptcy. What I did was I would go to the lenders and try to work out solutions. I'd settle them typically at big discounts, kind of like I do now. And if they didn't cooperate, then I didn't cooperate. And eventually, over time, I was able to settle those at big discounts. Now, that got me out of the trouble. And in 2008, I started this company, which is originally a nonprofit, but is now a for-profit. And now we started getting institutional investor interest. Our returns we generate typically, historically, we've always generated over 20% and sometimes over 30%, which is why we can pay investors 12%. And so we generated institutional investor interest, but then they do background checks and they would say, ooh, you have bad credit, you have millions of dollars of judgments against you, because I got in kind of a tat with the city and which wanted that property that ended up being severely damaged by the ice storm and eventually got it. I ended up being the subject of somewhat of a public smear campaign, and I was arrested, and there was news of being felony charges, all this bad stuff. Now, in reality, I have no criminal record, but when you see people that are a smaller city, it was the city of Columbus, Ohio, they want something, they use all their resources to, or in this case, they used all their resources to disparage me, and in the end, I contributed to me losing everything. No excuse, I made bad decisions on my own, but I do have no criminal record. But anyway, to go to institutional investors and say all this, bad credit judgments, arrest, all this stuff, and say, hey, but invest with me, it didn't work that well. So what they have me do is they'd have me write these long explanation letters, which I would write, and finally, it was difficult to, they'd find out, I'd say, please don't find out. They'd find out I would write these letters, and then it was kind of reactive. So finally, what I did is I said, this is getting exhausting, and the only way this is going to work is if the true story comes out. So I actually wrote a book about the whole situation, and actually, I brought down a dozen copies, so if anyone wants one, I'm more than happy to give you one. If I run out, give me your business card, I'll ship you one. And it gives the whole story, how I made millions and how I lost even more. And that is my explanation letter. But the net result is, from all that disaster, I always look for the silver lining. The silver lining was that I became very good at working these debts out, not only two places, one with the banks and also with the families. I really understand what they're going through, and the reality is when you're in debt and everything's coming at you, if someone gives you a clear path and says, this is what we can do, and it makes sense, you're going to do it. Instead of saying, hey, you got to pay all $100,000 on this house, it's worth $50,000, that's not going to work. And it's proven that Bank of America, Auckland, Wells, they all try and do this, it just doesn't work. So we make a very simple solution, it works very well, and that's why I think we have an edge in what we do, and I hope you consider investing with us. Thank you.